We began talking last week about some of the parenting lessons that I was fortunate enough to share to a group here in Houston. I was delighted. I was excited when some of the local young fathers reached out to me. They said, Rabbi Wolbe, can we arrange a 3-week or 6-week or 8-week, it ended up being, series where you teach us how to be a better parent? I said, me? Teach you to be a better parent? What do I know about parenting? And I was kind of flattered by it. And I even told some of my colleagues here, like, would you believe it? These people, they think that I have something to offer. And the reason why is because you're never sure if you're a good parent, because let's see the products, right? Let's see the results. And the results you don't really know until much later. My grandfather, blessed memory, used to say that when is excellent parenting? When is it evident? At what age is it evident? And the answer he gave is 30. When someone's really stable and really transitioning into adulthood, into maturation, that's when you could really assess the parenting that that person received. My oldest son is almost 17. So the jury's still out. The jury is still out. And as I mentioned last week, I was a much more confident parent when I had no children. I got this. I learned some pedagogical lessons. I could do this. And then, of course, the Almighty sends you children that humble you. And I was flattered to hear it. And I said to them, listen, I'm happy to share with you some parenting lessons, but I'm not coming to claim to be an expert. I'm not pretending to have all the answers, but I will share with you some ideas and some rules of thumb and some heuristics that I heard from my grandfather, blessed memory, who was renowned as one of the great pedagogues of the last century. Don't trust me on that. Google him. His books and his philosophy are very well accepted. Plus, ideas from the Torah. The Torah is instructive even for us, especially for us perhaps. And when we see a lot of lessons in parenting in the Torah, they are timelessly relevant. So in our last session on this topic, we went through some of the ideas, some of the heuristics of good parenting. The first idea we talked about is that, well, if the Almighty gave me a child, it is evidence that he believes in me. And he believes in my ability, and that I have the tools to raise this child properly. And therefore, it's not some sort of arcane, esoteric, unknowable knowledge. Even us can be good parents, which I think is comforting. Another idea that we said, which is also very comforting, and by the way, since our first recording on this subject, I had to sit down with some of those people who were listeners of this parenting workshop. And the following idea, they all mentioned they really liked it and it was very helpful for them. And that is that children grow on their own. They mature, they develop on their own. So what role do parents have? Do educators have? Do pedagogues have? Their primary role is not to mess up. It's avoiding mistakes. You make sure the child has what they need to flourish. And like a tree, the child will grow on its own. And that was a complete mind shift. Because if you're like looking for some sort of elusive, some sort of guide and manual that you don't even know, you can't find it, that's very frustrating. But if you just realize, I want to give the child whatever they need. I'm going to create an environment that is suitable for them to flourish. I'm going to give them the love and the attention and the care. I'm going to provide for them whatever they need. Emotionally, physically, spiritually. I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to make sure they're in a safe environment. I'm going to place the conditions for them to flourish, just like you would do if you're trying to raise a tree, a plant, grow something. You remove the weeds, clear the weeds. Give enough sunlight, enough water, they will grow on their own. They said that was a very valuable lesson, and that was one we mentioned last time. Good parenting is good character. Good character is good parenting. And the opposite is true as well. Bad character is bad parenting. And bad parenting invariably can trace itself back to bad character. And thus, if you want to improve as a parent, a proxy for that is to improve as a person, to overcome your impulsivity, to rein in your tendencies that may be not the best, to develop wonderful character and patience, to be calm, to be happy with your lot, to not be envious, to not be angry and full of rage and wrath. These are all things that we want to do personally in our own development, and that is the definition of good parenting. It's good character. And finally, we spoke about the couture principle, the idea that parenting is mixology, where you start off with a child that has some inborn traits, but that does not mean that has to be the end result of the child. Ishmael, who the angel testified, this kid is rotten. He is more wild than man. Somehow, Keturah was able to add enough ingredients, influences to the cauldron, and the net result is that Ishmael repented. He became righteous, and he was once again welcomed back into Abraham's good graces. We cannot change, we cannot alter the child that we are given, are delivered from heaven on high. But our job is to make sure that there's enough ingredients there that we can offset, so to speak, those negative characteristics, and we can make, it's possible at least, to take whatever flaws they have and position them in a way and add to the concoction in a way that the net result is wonderfully delightful and pleasant and aromatic. Those are some of the ideas we spoke about last time. Let's proceed. There's a very strange relationship that must be addressed when we talk about parenting in Genesis, parenting in the Torah. And that is Isaac and Rebekah and their twin boys. Isaac, son of Abraham. Rebekah, son of Bethuel, sister of Laban. They have twins. And before these twins are born, the prophet reveals to Rebekah that these two are opposites, and when one's up, the other one's down. And they're two different nations with warring philosophies. V'rav ya'avod tza'ir, and the older one will be subjected to the younger one. And Esau is born, and he's ruddy. He's red. And that is not just an insignificant throwaway description of what the babe looked like. It's a description of his character. And Rashi tells us, Simon, it's a sign that he will have a desire, a penchant for bloodshed. Now that does not mean that he'll be wicked. There are righteous people who also like blood. And those people, they find careers as mohels, as ritual circumcisers. They love the blood and they like the splurting blood. Make a mitzvah out of it. Esau should have chosen that path. But he's very base. He has a violent nature. He's a lust for blood. And he's very hairy. Why is that important? So again, the commentators explain, that means he's not simple. He's not smooth. Some people are just complicated. Everything gets caught up. Everything's knotty. Everything's a mess. His hairiness is significant because that shows that his inborn character is messy. And these kids mature. And they go in divergent paths. Vayi Esav ish yodei tzayid. Ish sadeh. Esau was a trapper, a man of the field, and Jacob was wholesome, and he dwelled in the tents. Now we know the future history of these twins. Jacob becomes the founder. The third in the triumvirate of patriarchs, the founder of the people. His 12 sons are the 12 tribes. So the entire nation goes from Abraham to Isaac, not Ishmael, to Jacob, not Esau, not Esau. And within Jacob, all of his 12 sons are heads of tribes. And where does Esau fit into this? Well, Esau is the primary antagonist. And multiple times he schemes and plots to try to kill Jacob. And he commits himself to do it after Isaac passes. And then Jacob has to flee. And he comes back and Esau is marching towards him with 400 men. And Jacob very skillfully outmaneuvers his brother. And then when they depart, Jacob says, I will see you later. And Rashi tells us, the Talmud tells us, the prophets tell us, Jacob and Esau, these two will be at each other for the duration of history and the final confrontation, the final battle before Messiah. Va'alu Moshe and Bahar Tzion lishpot es har Esau. There's going to be a battle between Jacob and Esau, the final showdown between these two. There's almost like, and there's never been a better representation of good versus evil, as was the case with Jacob and his twin brother. And most bafflingly, the verse tells us that Isaac loved Esau. Vaye'ehav Yitzchak es Esau. Isaac loved Esau. Ki tzayid befiv. Because there was trappings in his mouth. Now, what does that mean? Different opinions. Either because Esau would trap animals and make barbecue and give it to his father, or Esau was a trapper. He was cunning and conniving and trapping and ensnaring his father with his mouth, meaning he would speak in a way that misled his father. And the Talmud tells us that he would pretend to be very righteous, and he would come to his father with these very complicated halachic questions. How do you tithe salt? If I have a big pile of salt, how do I know what's 10% of that? You're going to count the granules? Really? You can't do that. So how do you tithe it? Wow, what a serious question. This son of mine, he really cares about doing what's right and tithing. But of course, this was just a facade. Really, he was a terrible person. As we read, he was a murderer. He did terrible things. He did very egregious crimes. But either way you interpret Isaac's love of Esau, we have a problem. Isaac, he's one of the forefathers. There's this triumvirate, this continuity, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, these pillars of the world. And he has a weakness for barbecue. Really? Really? He cares about the steak. He just can't keep away from the smorgasbord. He's on the carnivore diet. Really? This is what he cares about? That's troublesome. Alternatively, he was misled. He was so naive, he couldn't see past the way Esau portrayed himself. It's a problem. Rebecca loves Jacob. She sees things clearly. Isaac loves Esau, and he wants to give him the blessing. And there has to be this heist of the century, this heist of all history, where Rebecca compels Jacob to impersonate Esau and to wear his garments and to sneak in and pretend to be Esau, to be able to get those blessings that Isaac had desired to give to Esau. The whole story demands an explanation. And I want to maybe share two different perspectives. The first is very controversial. But it comes courtesy of Rav Hirsch. Rav Hirsch, one of the very significant German rabbis, lived in the 19th century. And he has a very famous piece where he pins a lot of blame on Esau's parents. That the reason why Esau ended up as a terrible sinner is partially due to the way he was raised. Now, it's important to note this is a controversial piece because to assign blame to Isaac is not something which we're trained to do. These are great, great heroes, our forefathers. We say God of Isaac. There's only three people that have that distinction. God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. No one else has that distinction. Isaac is one of the greatest people who ever lived. And we're very averse to criticize him. Rav Hirsch says that our sages criticize him so we can and learn the lesson and learn from his mistake, so to speak. And what Rav Hirsch says is that Isaac violated the first rule of parenting. The first rule of pedagogy. The first rule of parenting and pedagogy and education is that every single child is different. And therefore what works for one kid will not necessarily work for another kid. Parenting, education, raising children must be individualized. Chanoch lanar al pi darko. Educate the youth as per their path, not their siblings' path, not the neighbor's path, not their classmates' path, their path. And when you do that, Solomon tells us in Proverbs, gam ki yastin, also when they grow old, lo yasur mimeno. They will not depart from it. I can guarantee obedience. Your child misbehaving, I can guarantee obedience. What you do is, you take a whip and a pistol, and you threaten. And if a kid misbehaves, you whip them. And I will guarantee, 100%, a foolproof way to get the kids to follow what you want. Your kid's misbehaving? Easy solution. Corporal punishment. Bring it back. Caning, whipping, threatening, punishing. It works, right? So why don't we all do it? Of course, the reason is because it may work temporarily in the short term. But our goal, as I mentioned earlier, when we parent is when they mature. We put them on the right path for them that will last, that will endure. If they're only behaving properly today because they're worried of the consequences of misbehaving, well, as soon as they're able to free themselves of the shackles, of the whips, of the caning, they're off. And they're going to do whatever they really wanted to do. So this is maybe the reason why it's such a difficult subject, because we have to raise the kids today with the eye to the future, with the eye to the long term. The success of parenting will only be determined when the child's 30. And that raises a problem. How do I know what to do now that the child ends up to flourish and to be successful as an adult? So Solomon tells us you have to find the path of this child. And you have to educate them and rear them on this path. And then when they get older, they will not depart from it. You have to find what's the path for this child. Al pi darko. Well, what if you have two children? So my responsibility to child A is to find their path and child B to find their path. Each child requires a bespoke approach. And Rav Hirsch says, this is the cardinal rule of parenting that Isaac, maybe even Rebecca as well, violated. The verse says, Vayigdelu hana'arim. The children grew up. And then once they grew up, Esau became a trapper, a man of the field, and Jacob became a wholesome person who sat and dwelled in the tents. Now that seems to be a very innocent, benign verse. They grew up. But Rashi tells us what this means is that these two boys together, they grew up together. And then once they matured, they went on divergent paths. But when they were young, they were on the same trajectory. They were in the same environment. They were in the same schedule. They were undifferentiated as youths. Until their adolescence, there was not sufficient effort to instill within each child a different path, a different approach, a different method. And that is why Esau went awry. And Rav Hirsch has, again, very sharp words here. He says, if you have two students, a Jacob and an Esau, and they're on the same bench, in the same school, with the same schedule, with the same curriculum, with the same approach to learning, and they're on the same path, necessarily, at least one of them will get ruined. Maybe Jacob was better suited for study. He was more academic. He wanted to sit and dwell in the tents. What's the tents? The tents of academy, of study. And Esau was much more aggressive and rambunctious. And he wanted to be out, and he wanted to be in the fields. And maybe for him, there should have been a kind of upbringing that accounted for that, and that put him in a place on a trajectory where when he rose up, he wanted to depart from it. But because he was forced to sit on the same bench as Jacob, so when he was young, he didn't rebel, because kids don't rebel when they're young. Which is why you can use the whip if you want compliance only when they're young. But once he grew up, then he said, I'm out. And he got rid of the dusty books and went out to the field and became a sinful person. Became Esau the wicked. Because the lads grew up together, because Esau was raised alongside Jacob with the same environment and the same schedule and the same expectations, he was bound to rebel. And it didn't have to be like that. Yes, Esau was complicated. He was hairy. And yes, he had a penchant and a bloodlust. But there's a way to channel that in a productive manner. You cannot change the child you have. You have a child like Esau. This is what the Almighty gave you. And the second is born, he's different. And he's ruddy, and he's hairy, and he's much more complicated. What do you do about that? Find the path for this child. And there could have been a very different story for Esau. The plan really was for Esau to become the fourth patriarch. And there would be a harmonious relationship between these two twins. They would be synergetic, to use a consulting term. They would work together in synergy, where Jacob would do his part, and Esau would do his part, and one would fight for God in the tents, and one would fight for God in the fields, and they would work together in harmony. Esau would be a warrior for God. They'd find a way to use each one of their individual skill sets and talent stacks for the service of God. We have two brothers that did that. Jacob's two sons, Yisachar and Zevulun, Issachar and Zebulun. They made a famous pact, an agreement. Yisachar was much more of a studious type. And Zevulun was an enterprising businessman. And they made a deal. Yisachar, you study. I'm going to go out to do commerce. I'm going to go engage in business. And you study in the tent. That's your skill set. That's what you're better at doing. And I'm going to do my skill set, but we'll share the spoils of both. Half the Torah, half of your Torah goes to me, Zevulun, and half of my commerce goes to you. And we'll find a way that we can each contribute with our own specific skills. That agreement should have happened between Jacob and Esau. But because Esau was put onto the path of the scholar, he rebelled. They were raised together. Isaac and Rebekah failed to tailor their parenting to the individual nature, to the unique predispositions and temperaments of their twin boys. And that's why Esau rebelled. And these two boys, their paths diverged from each other. And Esau was going to be a warrior come what may. That was built into his nature. But instead of being a warrior in service of Jacob, he became a warrior in opposition to Jacob. He directed his weaponry and wrath and talent against his brother. Now, it's a controversial piece because Rav Hirsch really, lays into Isaac and Rebekah. But the point is unchallenged and undisputed. Jacob and Esau were different. They were twins, and they were different from the very beginning. And when you have different children, you must put them on different paths. Because one path for one child will result in them excelling, and that same path for that child's sibling will result in catastrophe. And today we're fortunate to have formalized schooling, and the idea that children grow up without any schooling is completely foreign and alien to us. And it's something to celebrate, but it's also important for us to realize that this is the downside. If you have a class and there's 20, 30 children, really you need to have a whole school for just one child. Because you have to educate the child as per their path. Well, they got a different path than the kid sitting right next to them. So how do you account for that? It's a big problem. And this is the downside of having formalized schooling, is that it's much, much harder for a child to get what they specifically need. And this is maybe the role of a parent today. You're going to send your child to 12 years, maybe even more years of school. You got to do kindergarten and pre-kindergarten and preschool. And then maybe once they finish high school, they want to go to continue their studies. And the school, well, there's only a certain amount of wiggle room that they have to individualize their instruction. So your job as a parent is to figure out, well, okay, maybe the school does this, but I have to adjust for that based upon the individual nature of my child. And if you have multiple children, that's a lot of juggling that you got to do. Because maybe you're lucky. All your children are the same and they all just flourish in the school. Great. The Almighty gives you that task and you could perform it. It's easier. But for every child, it's different. And every child is not necessarily fitting into the system. You have a lot of work on your hand. But if you have that, always remember the point we said last week. And that is the Almighty obviously believes in your ability to pull it off. So the first lesson, and it's a harsh lesson, it's a lesson that criticizes Isaac and Rebekah. Vayigdalu anarm, they grew up together, they're on the same bench, and they were not differentiated as children. And that worked, or that system worked great for Jacob. He continued and he remained in the tents, and he flourished. What they should have done is find some sort of Montessori sort of school for Esau. He should do some woodworking in the afternoon. He should be out in the fields. Teach him how to be a warrior for God, because he will be a warrior. You cannot change that. That's unchangeable. That's fixed. That's hardwired. And if you try to change it, it will backfire. That is one takeaway of the relationship between Isaac and Esau. And even if we're not comfortable with Rav Hirsch's criticism, the principle of the matter is undisputed. But there's a second school of thought. A school of thought that actually vindicates Isaac. The verse tells us Isaac loved Esau. That's very important. Parents have to love their children. Because if you don't love the child, you're not going to be able to forge that relationship that will give you the clout, the ability to influence them, to direct them. Children need love from the parent. They need it. So maybe your primary job is to love your child. Perhaps we could even say that. I'll be very comfortable saying that. The primary job of a parent is to love the child. And yes, it's natural, but you have to express it and you have to say it even when it's tough to love a child. My grandfather Basman used to say, only, this is what he said. He said this a million times. Only with love, only with love, only with love. But the kid's nuts and they drive me crazy. Only with love, only with love, only with love, only with love, only with love. That is the relationship. That's the basis of it all. Isaac loved Esau. And the verse says that he loved Esau because there was trappings in his mouth. That same verse, 25-28 of Genesis, it says Rebekah loved Jacob. But there seems to be a bit of an imbalance, an asymmetry. The verse says that Isaac loved Esau, Rebekah loved Jacob. Okay, we understand that. But it doesn't tell us the reason why Rebekah loved Jacob. Isaac loved Esau because he provided trappings in his mouth. And Rebekah loved Jacob. Why did she love Jacob? Doesn't say. Shouldn't there be a consistency, a balance, a symmetry? Here's a different way of thinking about the relationship between Isaac and Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob because it was so easy to love Jacob. The Bechir Ha'avos he's called. He's the choicest of the forefathers. This is Jacob. A man of total righteousness, truth, integrity, wholesomeness. He's the most lovable person in the world. He's easy to love. But how do you love Esau? How do you find something to love about Esau? And that was Isaac's task. I must love the child. I will find something. And he found something. Esau made wicked barbecue. This is what mattered to Esau. He was a trapper. He was a hunter. He was a barbecuer. He was one of those guys that's always around the grill. You know, when they have a grill, there's some people that just gravitate to the grill and they want to flip it. They want to look at it. They take a temperature probe and they put it in the brisket to make sure it's just right. You know those people. We love them. We want to be friends with them, right? At least give me some of that brisket. Esau, he had a skill. And is this a skill that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob really care for? This is what these angels cared, they cared, they were foodies? No, I refuse to believe that Isaac was a foodie. But Isaac, as a parent, he realizes, if it's important to my child, it's important to me. Whatever mishigas the child's into, it's important for me to say, if you're into it, if you're interested in it, it's important to me too. A child has to know the parent cares about me and doesn't just disregard me. And what's important to me is important to them. See parents that they have their life. They're adults. They're dealing with adult things. And the child's playing with Lego or Pokemon. And it's just not important. Okay, I'm sorry. It's just not important to the parent. What does the parent do? Wow, you built this. Amazing. This is incredible. Why? Because you're telling the child, you're signaling to the child, I care about you. I love you. You're important to me. And what you're into, what's important to you, is important to me too. And for a child, what's important to them is play. That's very, very important. And if the parent says, it's not important to me, because it isn't, the child interprets that as my parent doesn't care for me. My parent doesn't love me. So Isaac scoured Esau to find something that he could celebrate in his son. And I said, wow, look at that. Look at this incredible trappings. And this is actually a textbook example of what we should do. The patriarchs dedicated their lives to building the nation. They were responsible for fixing the entire world. These are prophets. They're operating on the highest level. Isaac was not a foodie, and he did not care for such trivialities. But he feigned interest for the benefit of Esau. And he understood, this is the second school of thought. This child, they have certain natural predispositions, inclinations, and he likes the blood, and he's red, and he has a penchant for killing. I want you to kill. But do me a favor, kill animals, not humans. I want you to take the meat and to butcher it and to carve it and to slice it and all that. Use it for that purpose. And we're going to celebrate. We're all going to get together and we're going to enjoy what you craft for us. Isaac found something worthy of celebration within Esau. He knew very well who he was dealing with. And he found a way to celebrate something. Rebekah, she loved Jacob. Why? Everyone loved Jacob. Look at Jacob. But Isaac found a way to love Esau. Now, of course, despite Isaac's efforts, Esau still has free will. And even the best parenting ultimately can't determine how the child turns out because the child still has free will. And Esau went haywire and he careened off the path. But Isaac did the best job possible. He found a way, he tried to direct Esau's bloodlust for a more benign form. But Esau chose a different path. So two is to look at Isaac's relationship with Esau, one in a more positive light, one in a more negative light. But certainly the principles of both of those ideas are very helpful for us if we want to raise good children. Let's move on to Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons, and these 12 sons are going to be the tribes of the Jewish people. But these boys, some of them do very terrible things, very unconscionable things, very egregious things. Reuben's the oldest one, and he takes responsibility for the family. And he defends his mother. And when Rachel dies, Jacob made a decision to take his primary bed and move it into the tent of Bilhah. It's complicated. You have 4 wives, and a lot of balancing you need to do to make everyone happy. Jacob had a favorite. That's Rachel. And he was duped into marrying Leah as well, ended up with 4 wives. We know the story. But his primary presence, his primary bed was in the tent of Rachel. She passed, and he moved it into the tent of Bilhah, which is Rachel's maidservant. And Reuben thought that was an affront to his mother, Leah. She's a more primary wife after all. So he dragged Jacob's bed from the tent of Bilhah to the tent of Leah. He jumbled the bed, which is not the worst crime we would imagine. The way the Torah portrays it is that he's meddling into Jacob's conjugal affairs, and that's totally improper. And Jacob says nothing. When their sister Dinah was abducted and violated, Shimon and Levi, they do a ruse, a deception, and they slaughter an entire city. And again, Jacob does not criticize them at that point. You think about the crimes that these 3 boys did, and they go unaddressed, really, for decades. And on the last day of his life, Jacob gathers his sons and he shares with them a blessing. And he speaks to each son individually and he lashes out. Maybe that's not an appropriate word. He criticizes and rebukes and castigates these 3 sons, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, for their crimes. Reuven, you are impulsive. You are impetuous. You run like water. I'm punishing you. And I'm taking away the kingdom and the priesthood. Shimon and Levi, you're brothers, but you use stolen craft, the craft of Esau. And you destroyed a man, you killed a man, and you tried to hamstring an ox. Arur apam ki az, cursed is their anger, for it is fierce. And he punishes them and says, I don't want to be part of the future crimes of descendants of Shimon and Levi, and I want to scatter them and divide them amongst the nation. At the end of Moshe's life, he also rebukes the nation. Why did Jacob wait to the end of his life to rebuke, to criticize his boys? Why did Moshe wait to the end of his life to criticize the nation? Why did Joshua wait to the end of his life? Why did Samuel wait to the end of his life? Why did David wait to the end of his life before they gave criticism? The answer is because criticism is very, very, very dangerous. Criticism breeds alienation. When you criticize someone, they're not a machine. It's not debugging a machine. They get very defensive. And it takes someone very special to take criticism to heart and say, you're right. I need to improve. Criticism is potentially a big mistake or a big area where parents and educators can blunder. You must approach it very delicately. And the Midrash says there's 4 reasons why if you want to criticize your child, you wait until you're on your deathbed. Because if you do it earlier, it can be catastrophic. If you're going to criticize, you have the ability to do it exactly once. You do it twice, the kid begins to suspect, well, maybe they're just trying to get back at me and they hate me, and maybe they're doing it only because they want to promote and accentuate their own righteousness. You have exactly one opportunity to criticize. That's it. Once you do it, your ability and the justification for your criticism is exhausted. And therefore, if you wait till your deathbed, then you could do it and you'll know you'll only do it once. When you criticize someone, it creates a little bit of a tension in the relationship. Whenever they see you, they may remember that. If you're on your deathbed, you know they're not going to see you anymore. Then it's okay to criticize because you won't have that continued embarrassment that comes post-criticism. When you criticize someone, they may hold that against you. They may harbor ill will towards you. You do it on your deathbed, you avoid that problem. And finally, criticism can be so stinging, it can cause total alienation. And Jacob says, this is the words of the Midrash. Had I criticized Reuven earlier, he would have potentially abandoned me and joined the ranks of Esau. This is an astonishing statement. Reuven was so weak, was so brittle, was so insecure, had such a low self-esteem that he would have left Jacob and joined Esau? It's an astonishing statement. This is the Torah's perspective on criticism. Criticism is very necessary. We see Jacob does it, Moshe does it, Joshua does it, Samuel does it, David does it. It's important. It's even a mitzvah. Hochech, tochech, samesach. You must surely criticize and redirect and castigate your fellow. But it must be productive. And it's so easy to get it wrong. It's so easy to do it in an excessive way, to do it in a way that it is taken in the wrong way. And it could breed alienation, and it could cause a tension in the relationship, and it could cause the child to actually not, or the charge, to not improve, but actually to just say, I'm done with you. I think this is a very important lesson from the Torah on parenting and really any sort of influence that we're trying to do to other people. could be an educator, it could be a boss, certainly a parent, teacher. Criticism is very dangerous. And there's so many ways for it to go wrong. And Jacob says, I'm not taking any chances. I'm going to wait till I'm on my deathbed. And the very last day of his life, he's 147 years old. Now it's time. And by the way, there's more to this, that even the criticism is described as a blessing. He's just trying to tell them where they need to improve. And he's trying to design their life in a way that their career will be safer and less risky, a less risky lifestyle based upon their flaws. And Moshe, by the way, he waits until he smites Sichon and Og, just so everyone knows that he loves the nation and has their best interests at heart. Criticism is very important and very, very delicate. And to do it right, you really have to hold back. Hold back. The Talmud tells us, with children and with students, with our right and dominant hand, we pull them close, and with our left and weaker hand, we push them away. There must always be more encouragement, more love. That has to be the right hand. More pulling close. Criticism is done with the weaker hand. It's done less frequently, and it's done without the same intensity of the love and of the bringing close. Very, very important lesson. Number 3. Let's get to the last lesson I want to share with you today. And again, I want to stress, I'm not claiming that I'm a great parent, especially I'm worried that my kids will listen to the podcast and they'll say, "Oh, you big talker. Is this really true? How come you once said this to me?" Of course, I don't have to worry about that, because the only thing that all my children agree upon is that they don't want to listen to the podcast. That's the only thing that they all agree upon. They're all different, but one thing unites them all. So I'm safe. I can even tell them, I spoke about you in the podcast. They'll say, okay. They're not going to pursue it. Maybe when they get older. I don't know. In the book of Exodus, Sefer Shmos, Parshas Shemos, Moshe is nominated, is appointed, is promoted by God. I want you to go save the Jewish people. Go to Pharaoh, tell Pharaoh, demand from Pharaoh that he release the Jews, the slaves that he has been holding. Go tell him, go threaten him, go inform him, the God of the Israelites spoke to me, release the Jews. And Moshe launches a salvo of objections. And Rashidas tell us there's actually a 7-day conversation in Exodus chapter 3 and 4 by the burning bush, where Moshe is resisting, he's objecting, he's pushing back, he doesn't want to do it. And it takes him, it's a whole chapter 3 and half of chapter 4, where Moshe is pushing back. He doesn't want to take the reins, which maybe shows us the caliber, the perspective of this person. That he doesn't want leadership just to have the publicity and have the power. He's stridently objecting to taking the post. And the first objection is that he's not worthy. Vayomer Moshe, Moshe said to God, Mi anochi, who am I? I'm going to go to Pharaoh. I'm going to go speak to kings. I'm not worthy of it. I'm a regular person. I'm going to alter human history, world history. I'm not the right person. I don't have the qualities and the qualifications needed for this role. And I will take Israel out of Egypt. So Rashi explains that this is really two different objections. Even if I were to be personally worthy to leave Egypt, you need to have a miracle. And to be worthy of a miracle, you have to be righteous. And Moshe assessed the nature of the people, the flock that he was being asked to lead, and he deemed them unworthy. And we know the Jews were idolaters. The Jews stopped circumcising their boys, with the exception of the tribe of Levi. So what merit do they have to be worthy of the Exodus? And God responded to Moshe and rebutted both objections. Vayomer, and God said, Ki eye imach, I will be with you. Meaning, you say you're unworthy. Who am I to go speak to kings? Who am I to go speak to Pharaoh? It's not you, it's me. I will be with you. I can save the Jews. No one contests that. You'll be my messenger, my implement, but it's not you. That was the rebuttal of Moshe's claim, I'm not worthy. Who am I? Maybe you're no one. Ultimately, it is all from God. And he's going to give you whatever you need. But ultimately, it will be him who will effectuate this Exodus. And regarding the second question, the second objection, Vishesha'alta, and that you asked, Rashi explains, what merit does Israel have to leave Egypt? To that, God says, this is the curious point, V'zelacha'os, and this is the sign that I sent you. When you take the nation out of Egypt, you will serve God on this mountain. The burning bush was at Mount Sinai, at the mountain of God. Har Chorev, Mount Horeb. And that, of course, is the site where the Ten Commandments were conveyed, where the sign of revelation happened. So God is saying, what merit does the nation have, the nation currently enslaved in Egypt, what merit do they have to leave? A few months after the Exodus, a month and a half after the Exodus, they will worship God on this mountain. Now this is totally perplexing. Moshe is objecting, the nation is not worthy of a miracle, and therefore, how do you expect them to leave Egypt? How does God's answer, after they leave, they'll worship me on this mountain, how does that answer the question? The question is that the nation is not worthy of the Exodus because they're not worthy of such a miracle. And God responds, well, they'll get the Torah, they'll have the Ten Commandments, they'll have prophecy at Sinai 3 months later. How does that address the question? So I want to suggest that it precisely addresses the question. Moshe assessed the nation. He's looking at the nation, and they're in Egypt, and he's looking at their character, and looking at their behavior, and looking at their values, and how they're living their lives. They are not worthy of a miracle. A miracle of the caliber of the Exodus. You have to be really worthy of it. And God says, you're right. You're assessing the nation the way they are right now, and you are accurate. They're not worthy of a miracle. But suppose you're able to envision what they would look like after the Sinai revelation, after they experience Sinai with their very eyes, their very ears. They witness the tremendous miracles at Sinai, and they get the Torah. What would they look like then? Would they be righteous enough then? Would they be worthy then for a miracle of the caliber of the Exodus? If you gave Sinai to this nation, would they be worthy? Of course. Well, then they're worthy. We just have to give them Sinai. A leader, an educator, a parent, has to envision what their constituents, their children, their students, their pupils, their charges will look like if they got excellent instruction and they got whatever they needed. Suppose this child experienced Sinai. Would they be worthy then? Certainly they would. Okay, so they're worthy. They just need to be given the environment, the atmosphere, the circumstances, and the experiences to have all their greatness shine forth. But they are already worthy now. We just have to give them whatever they need to have that worthiness come to the forefront. To me, this is maybe the most important lesson of them all. maybe the biggest mistake parents, educators, leaders make is we look at a child and a charge as a finished product. And Moshe is saying, look, I'm looking at them. And my assessment is that they're not worthy. And God says, your assessment is correct, but you're looking at them incorrectly. You have to see all their potential. If there was a way to actualize all their potential, to bring it to the surface, to allow it to blossom and flourish, would they be worthy then? You have to look at what they would become with excellent instruction and guidance. A gemologist can look at a rough, unpolished, mud-caked, recently mined diamond. And to us, it's a dirty rock. And to them, it's a crown jewel. Because they know it's a dirty rock now. We'll polish it. We'll clean it. We'll cut it. And it can be placed right in the center of a crown. So it's tremendously valuable even today. We just have to touch it up. We just have to polish it and clean it and smooth over some of the rough edges. But today it's very, very, very valuable. It's a very crown jewel today. Sinai is the polishing. It's just the polishing of the gem that was already there. It's just the cutting and the trimming of the rough edges of the gem that was already there. God tells Moshe, you're looking at crown jewels. And yeah, they don't look like crown jewels today. But they are indeed brilliant and jaw-dropping and stunning and worthy of being installed in the crown. Our children, our students, our pupils are crown jewels. We must evaluate them accordingly. If we look at them now as finished products, you would not take an uncut, unpolished diamond and place it in a crown. No one would do that. Moshe is saying that they're not worthy. They're not worthy. Will they become worthy if we give them whatever they need? They sure will. Okay, so they are indeed crown jewels. So we have 4 takeaways, which I think, these are not my own opinions. I think they're well accepted as being important, accepted principles of raising good children. So don't say that this is my idea. It's not my ideas. These are some ideas that are very well accepted. Number 1, the first rule of parenting, individualized. Don't place your Jacobs and your Esau's on the same bench, on the same path. And yes, it's a bit harder to do today because everyone's sent to the same school. And that's why we still have a role to play as parents, even though a lot of the education has been outsourced. Idea number 1. Rebecca loved Jacob because he was lovable. Everyone agreed he was lovable. But Isaac found a way to love even someone as problematic, as complicated as Esau. He found something to celebrate in him. What's important to you, our children must know, is important to me, even if it's something trivial. Criticism is dangerous. Delay it. Minimize it. Be very wary of allowing it to run amok. And finally, envision your child post-Sinai, with all the circumstances and necessary elements in place for greatness. And that's how you must judge them even today. May we all be so fortunate as to raise our children well, do the best job possible. Of course, part of that, maybe central part of that is to pray. God is our partner in every child. And the way we get the Almighty's help is by asking for it. Prayer is an indispensable part of all efforts in our life, and certainly this most crucial and vital and indispensable of pursuits, the raising of our children. May we all witness our children flourish and be healthy and stable and balanced and righteous adults. Abraham was praised for not only introducing monotheism to the world, but when God revealed to him what his plans were for Sodom and Gomorrah, God says something that's very special about Abraham, because I know that he will command his household and his children after him. V'shamar derech Hashem, and they will uphold the way of God. Abraham was praised not only for his own personal righteousness, but for the fact that he perpetuated it onward. This is the most important mission that we have in our life, is to perpetuate the values that we receive from our parents onward, the values that we received from the previous generations onward, and to hopefully do the best job possible and pray that the Almighty helps us as well. And we should witness our children flourishing and maturing. Even when they grow older, they should not deviate from the path. My email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. I want to thank my friends in the neighborhood that put me onto this task of trying to clarify and formalize some of the ideas. I think it's useful. Of course, the Torah has the answers for all of our questions, even questions as important as parenting. Again, the email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. I look forward to your questions, your comments, and your feedback.